Hello and welcome to the Addicts Anonymous podcast. I'm your host, Jim R. Today's episode 185, and we're going to be interviewing Allie. How are you doing today, Allie?
I'm doing good, thank you, Jim. I'm doing good.
I'm glad to hear that. So you're joining us from the UK today.
Yeah, I am. Cambridge in the UK.
Nice, nice. I love talking to people from all over the world. I think it's so cool, the technology we have.
Oh, it really is.
If you think
Zoom.
about it, yeah, just the click of a button and we're face to
Yeah,
face.
absolutely.
All right, so let's get started. Like I was telling you before, my first question is always the same to everybody. Tell me about your childhood and growing up.
Well, I always say to people my childhood was like a fairy tale because obviously being an addict myself and in recovery, I never knew about any drink or drugs growing up. Up until the age of 12, I never heard my parents argue, and there was just no issues at all until my mum and dad split up when I was 12, and then it kind of all changed. But
Your mom,
yeah, so
what?
until my mum and dad split up when I was
Oh, they
12.
split up. Okay.
Yeah, but up until then, we had lovely holidays at Butlins, and I've got a sister who's 7 years younger than me, so that was all exciting having a little baby sister. And yeah, there was just no problems or issues in my little childhood. I've got a brother that's a year and a half older than me. I was very close to him, and I used to be a bit of a tomboy with him and his friends.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
So, how did the divorce affect you? Because I know for me personally, my parents split when I was 8. I don't remember a lot of it. I think I blacked out a lot of it because I consider it trauma, but it destroyed me. I know for me, it was very hard. And I now realize years later how hard it was. How do you think it affected you?
Yeah. Well, I was the middle child, it did affect me terribly. I mean, I didn't really come to terms with it for many years, really. But as soon as, because my dad was a taxi driver, and he sort of said to me and my brother, we was playing on the green, go in, your mum wants to speak to you. And we've gone in, and she sat us down and she said, me and your dad are getting a divorce. And that was it. I ran straight out the door, running off, and obviously they come and found me. But I didn't accept it at all good. I really didn't. So yeah, I think every child wants mum and dad together, and I used to have this best friend, Sam, who we used to speak, my mum and dad aren't going to split up, and she'd say her mum and dad didn't, and it turned out mine did and hers didn't, although they have later on. But yeah, it wasn't nice. It wasn't nice at 12 when they split up. Considering they didn't have arguments, that we didn't never grow up seeing anything untoward.
So it
As I
was
say,
surprising.
it was really, my dad used to, well, it was him working away. He was a taxi driver. Obviously, now I know he was having an affair with another lady, and that was why he wasn't there a lot, which he openly speaks to me about, saying he regrets how he treated my mum, which is really honest of him to say that. He actually lives with me.
Your
Yeah.
ex-husband?
No, my dad, he's
Your
76.
dad?
He lives with me. Yeah, he's been with me 8 years.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, and we speak a lot. So I know he wouldn't mind me saying that he regrets an awful lot of how he treated my mum, because she was a good mum when we were young. Very good.
Well, that's man of him to admit it.
Yeah.
Yeah, admit your wrongs, and it also probably helped him keep his conscience clean.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it affected you terribly. How was it like in school and your social life?
So so we end up, my mum met someone. I'm not exactly entirely sure how long it was after my mum and dad were splitting up. She got with my stepdad. Excuse me. But what happened was, we ended up, my mum said we're moving from our upbringing home, the fairy tale home, and we were moving into her new partner's home. And that's when it really started affecting me, because we've moved out of our family home into a new, man's home. which was exciting. My stepdad at the time, it was all exciting, you know, having this new dad figure. But yeah, you know, saying this in the best way I can, I was never comfortable. It just changed from how my upbringing was to how it was with my mum, with my stepdad. He's an alcoholic, you know. That's how the first time I ever knew about drink was he used to drink. I now know, you know, he's an alcoholic and he's not in recovery, but that's his choice.
So
And
he's
that's
still drinking?
yeah, yeah. Sometimes I go because my mum lives near my eldest daughter, so sometimes I have to drive, and my mum's not in my life. It's a very, very sore subject, and I'm not going to go into detail too much about that. But she's, you know, I've been a nightmare teenager because I never really accepted my mum and dad splitting up. But the bottom of it is, you know, I weren't comfortable in the home. I was never comfortable with my stepdad. And, you know, certain things happen. And, you know, my mum's still with him and that's her choice, but it's a terrible choice as far as I'm concerned. And because I can speak quite openly as I've got stronger, as I've got older, she is clearly living in some denial. And I think she sees me as quite a threat, sadly. And yeah, so the last text I got from her is she would never speak to me ever again because she didn't like the truth I said to her on the phone. But yeah, my life just changed when my mum got with my stepdad, and it's not for the better. Yeah,
It's a shame.
yeah.
So that's something that you, well, I don't guess not get into it. So
Mm.
let me ask you this. You graduated school?
Yeah, I mean, we don't really say the word graduate so much here, but you know, I done my GCSEs, and also with school, I never ever, you know, how can I say this and not being unkind to myself? I I experimented things at a young age, and
What, like
I
drugs?
no, it weren't drink or drugs at a young age with boyfriends.
Okay.
I just wanted to be loved, you know, and sorry, what was that question again? I've just totally forgot.
Oh, I forgot the question also.
I told you I'd get a bit of break.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so as I say, so I was never really comfortable in my school years because I felt quite intimidated by older girls.
Okay.
And it kind of ruined my school experience, if I'm honest. You know,
Have you ever been able to figure out why you were terrified of the older girls?
um, I always felt that the girls felt like their boyfriends liked me or something like that, you know. So um, yeah, I was just name calling and just sort of really intimidating me. And I don't know, you know, what's so good about me. I really don't know, but that's how it was for me at school. So yeah, again, it was kind of I was uncomfortable at home, and then I wasn't happy going to school. I just didn't feel I fitted in anywhere really, anywhere. Um, and but I did do my GCSEs. They were terrible. I think French I got ungraded, and yeah, so I didn't really leave school with anything really good that I can say. You know, that I come away with good grades and that. No,
I
yeah,
guess you guys would call it university, not college. Did you go to
no,
university?
no. It's called college. I
Oh,
didn't
oh, it's
go.
called college there?
Yeah, I didn't
Okay,
go
so
to
I was wrong.
university. No, I didn't go to university, but I done
Decided
college.
decided not to.
Yeah, well, I didn't have it in me. You know, when I was at school, I couldn't wait to leave. You
Oh,
know,
me too.
and
I'm the same way.
yeah, you know, when I left, I went straight into well, if we can go back a bit, I was actually in care towards the end, you know, 14, 15. I was in care for a bit, and then they moved me out at 16 into my own accommodation. Um, you know, like a proper place for 16-year-olds. And I'm forgetting again. Forgetting the question again.
Oh, we were just talking about graduating or the reason you didn't go to college.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it.
we were talking about the reason you didn't go to college.
So I didn't ever feel I was very good academically. I really didn't feel good enough, so to speak. Yeah.
Okay. So what did you do once you graduated high school?
So I then wanted to be a mechanic. I wanted to be like Kylie Minogue off Neighbours because I used to
Like
love
a
that.
car mechanic?
Yeah, yeah. So I was an apprentice car mechanic at 16. And I was loving it. And then I fell pregnant. Probably I must have been there maybe 6 months and I fell pregnant. So yeah, then I stopped doing that and ended up having a baby at a young age, just turned 17.
Wow, that's so young.
Yeah, and when I look back at photos of myself, I look like a child. I mean, a young child, because I always looked very young for my age. I was one of these that would, because I smoked cigarettes, you know, and I'd be ID till I was probably about 30. Yeah, I
Nothing
wish
wrong
that
with
had
that.
happened. I wish it would happen now.
That's what I'm saying. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I had my first baby at 17.
Were you scared?
Yeah, I think the honest answer to that is I was excited, I was scared, but you know, I all I wanted to feel was love, you know, and for me, it was having a baby. Now I didn't go out specifically to fall pregnant, but I weren't extra careful, if I'm honest. You know, I weren't like you take the pill every day. I know I weren't taking that how I should be. So really deep down, I think it was clear I wanted this baby, you know, and I was on my own. The dad wasn't involved.
How come?
That's sad as well. As I say, I kind of, so I don't want to be unkind to myself. I had two boyfriends at the time. They're not even a true boyfriend. It was just I was seeing, living my sort of wild days then. I was experimenting with weed, ease, you know, going to legal raves. I was really mixing in that scene. And that's how I fell pregnant with my first child. And the truth is, I didn't know who the dad was. I couldn't say 100% I knew. In actual fact, me and my mum went round to one of their parents to tell them, and it wasn't even him, it was the other one.
Yeah.
So I know, you
So
know, I
did
look
they
back.
have to all? They all took paternity tests.
Well, no, it was all, they was all in denial at the time. They didn't want to know. It was me on my own. My mum was almost like the father. She was absolutely amazing, my mum. You know, there's issues with my mum and I feel heartbroken in my heart about her because that's her choice that she don't want to have any involvement with me. And it does break my heart deep down, but I know it's the right thing for my life now, for me to be able to cope in life. But you know, I will never take away the fact of what a wonderful mother she was when I was young and when I was, you know, because I've got other children. I had my first at 17 and she was there. She was there for me so much. So I'll always make sure I praise my mum where it's due.
That's good.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
good. She was there to help you.
very much so. Yeah.
If I could ask, is you have a boy or a girl?
Boy, his name
Boy,
was Lee. Yeah, he's
Lee.
now 32.
Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
no, you go.
I was going to say I've actually got 4 children.
Oh wow, awesome.
Yeah, I've got I've got 5 grandchildren as well.
Oh,
Uh,
that's amazing.
yeah, so I
You
mean,
got a
you know,
beautiful family, I'm sure.
I really, really do have a beautiful family, and I get told that quite regularly. Obviously, I'm going to be biased, but I literally do. They're all really beautiful children, and but I mean, yeah, I could go into talking quite a lot more about it all because so I had my first one, Lee. Then I had my daughter Carmen. I met this man. I don't know if I'm allowed to say names on here, am I? Or
Well, just give us his first name.
Chris. So
Chris?
I met this man, and we was together 4 years. So we had my daughter Carmen. So I got Lee, and then we had Carmen, and then he was
How
the
old were
single
you when Carmen was born?
18, I think 18, 19.
Oh, so it
Yeah,
was fairly quickly after your first child.
about a year and a half after Lee, I think,
Was that
around.
planned or was that an accident?
Yeah, me and Chris did plan Carmen.
Okay. Okay.
And he had two children. He was a single parent. So I was like 18. I got with this man, and there's two children and my one. So we have three. And then we're living together. And then we have Carmen. And then I fell pregnant straight after having my daughter. Couldn't believe it. So I had 5 children by the age of 21.
Five?
Literally 5. I think I was 19 when I had Carmen. No, I couldn't have been. Yeah. 5 children by the age of 21. 2 being stepchildren and 3 being my own.
Wow. That's a
Yeah.
big family for a young gal.
And sadly, me and their dad split up. He didn't treat my son the best. In fact, it was terrible. I had social services involved because he actually bit my son's hand once.
You bit your son?
That's not discipline. That is abuse.
Yeah.
So that's the first kind of involvement I had with social service to do with me and my children. And obviously, my love kind of went for the man once he treated Lee like that. He was actually a lot of the time he was jealous of me and Lee's relationship because I was a doting mother. I did smoke weed at the time, but I'd stopped doing all, like the partying rave scene, the E's and the amphetamine and all this. I weren't doing nothing like that. I just used to smoke weed. So I was quite a calm person. And, having he actually drank alcohol. He was 9 years older than me. And I used to wonder why he kept wanting to go out to the pub. Why does he keep wanting to have a drink? Because it didn't bother me then. I wasn't a drinker, I'd have a Lambrini. It'll probably last me a month. One of them really weak bottles of wine, Lambrini, 5% or whatever. And so our relationship, fell through. It couldn't carry on. So I was on my own, young, with 3 children.
That's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah. But as I say, my mum was a great help. She really was. My dad was there as well, of course. He was there as well. My dad was ever so good. Like, brought me cars. He took us, a holiday, got for me and the children. My mum's took us on holidays before. They have really been good parents, and done the best they can with me. But, all I ever felt, if I'm honest, I never ever felt like, it was, I wanted more. I never felt loved enough. I never felt like I was being treated right, or, it's kind of me sort of thing. But I only realised that as I've got older. And being in recovery, of course, it makes you really learn about yourself and how you treat people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what we expect from them and what we shouldn't expect from them, I now know that how my mum is and how she don't want to know me, and I have to accept that's her choice. And really, I think my mum can't be too well to be living a life like she does, being a mother where she rejects her children, because it's not just me. I have an elder brother and she don't have nothing to do with him either. I struggle with that a lot, and I make it clear to my children, I will never be a parent. In fact, once my eldest boy, he was married, and his wife, before they were getting married, and she said to me on a phone call, "You're lucky you're coming to the wedding, the mother you've been to to my Lee." I never forget that. Now I could have retaliated and said whatever back to her, but I chose to not because I weren't prepared to lose my son, and that's what would have happened. That's the difference with me and my mum. I will never, ever lose my children in that way. And, I've gone through a lot with them with social services. I almost lost them into care.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
So when did your substance abuse start?
Well, like I say, in all honesty, it was when I was about 16, when I was going into the rave scene, and it was ease, trips, and it was weed smoking then. That's when it really started. And I'd have a drink, but nothing massive, not in the way of it being a problem. It was more of a social thing. It really was the weed at that time. That was the big thing for me. And I became a weed smoker a lot. Every day I'd be smoking weed.
You
Yeah.
smoke a lot of it,
Then I did.
then
I
you
remember.
stopped.
I remember. I can look back and remember I used to drive making a spliff, literally. Who would do that? How insane is that? But
You
that's
know,
what I did. That's what I did. Yeah.
we look back at the stupid stuff we did and amazing
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Shocking.
So it was around 16. Who was it with? Who did you first use it with? It was at it because you said you went to raves and stuff. So I guess it was with
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah. Who was
Like,
it
how
with?
did the first time happen?
Do you know, I really couldn't tell you. I can't remember exactly pinpoint. I really don't know how the first time it happened. I just think it was in a place called the YMCA, smoking spliff. I'm sure what I remember it was that, and it was going to a rave, doing a trip, and then we'd do it in my room in the shed, the big like youth hostel, so to speak. I remember trying to jump out of a window once, tripping, and
Oh no!
thinking spiders were all on my wallpaper. Oh, you know.
And that was on ecstasy.
Mm, I think it was acid. Actually, it was acid.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like hallucinogenic.
Not. Yeah, it was acid. Yeah,
Yeah.
nasty. Mm, yeah. So
So when would you say your drug use got out of hand?
okay. So after splitting up with the father, who had two children, remember, and I've got my three. I think because before I had Lee, I obviously got into raving. I just told you about all that. And then having Lee, so my life became a mother. And then when I've had my two and with my partner and the other two, my life was being a mum. And I know I was a really good mother. I used to have people say, Ali, how do you cope? And I'd say, I have to. Because at one point, the children's dad was in prison for drink driving, and I was on my own. Yeah, again, my mum was brilliant. She was there. And what was the question again? Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, so really it got out of hand when I was on my own with the children, and I met a friend who kind of, yeah, was going out. I think they were dealing at the time actually. And I started going out for sometimes, and I really, really enjoyed the going out. In actual fact, now I got with a boy who happened to be doing a lot of cocaine, and he was someone I knew from years back. In actual fact, you'd look at him, you would not believe that he used to do that cocaine, and that's how it really first started. So I'd do it with him, and then what happened kind of later on is because I don't, as I told you, I'm starting to write a book, and I'm going to be absolute honest in that book. I'm not in denial about my life at all. I'm in recovery to be an honest person. And if that means some of it I'm quite embarrassed about, then that is the way it is. I can't change my past. But I got into escorting, and that's because I never had financial or even any support of the children's dad, you know. And I always used to feel, what's the word? It's not embarrassed, but asking my mum or my dad, if they can help me, if I can lend this, or I used to hate that feeling. So I ended up thinking I was going to go out to dinner with men, and that was it. I was so naive to it because I wanted to be able to take my kids on holiday. I wanted to be able to do that. I wanted to be able to buy and designer trainers like their friends, or, you know, go on holidays. I wanted to be able to do all this. Yeah, so that's how it kind of really progressed, because one of the drivers was actually doing crack cocaine, and I didn't know what it was at the time. I hadn't a clue when he gave me this pipe, and I'm thinking it's just coke. You know, that's how naive I was, or gullible, you know, and that's how I first started. Really, my drug use got out of hand with crack cocaine. Yeah, I think I was about 26, 20, probably, yeah, about, yeah, I'd say about 25, 26.
What does crack cocaine feel like?
Well, I'm not going to lie, I used to absolutely love it. Um, but over the years, it got out of hand. You know, I'd be having the money. I'd put, you know, my children to bed, and then I'd be in my bedroom. I could easily just do 200 or 300 to myself. It's so dangerous, that drug. It's absolute soul destroying. It really is. And you know, I look back. In fact, I had a conversation with my daughter. She's 30, not long back. And even though they know, because I've done amends, part of my recovery, you know, we do amends, step 9, and I remember sitting my children down doing this meal and just openly saying to them, I just need to say my sorry to you lot, so generally, you know, about how really I lived my life and I was stuck in that addiction. And I'd go out trying to score late at night, and I'd leave them in the house, and they might have been in their bed. My daughter said the other day, you'd always make sure we was in bed, but I used to be so frightened. I'd go in with her brothers, and it just really hurt my heart, you know, listening to her. Because when you're in that addiction, you don't realise what they're really going through. You think they're tucked up, they're in bed, that's it, they're not going to know. And you'll do that pipe, and then before you know it, it's 2 hours later. And in my head, I said to my daughter, but no, I used to rush and want to get home so quick, knowing you're in the house. And they're probably 10, 11, 12 or whatever, you know, not tiny, but still, you know, I'm not responsible the minute I've had that pipe. I ain't coming home being a responsible parent to them at all, being all paranoid. That's an awful life of destruction. And that is where it totally destroyed my life and the mother, you know, that I always wanted to be.
What
Yeah.
kind of negative effects did it have on you?
What, sorry?
What kind of negative effects did it have on you?
Did what have on me?
The cocaine, the crack cocaine, because you said
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you took hold
Yeah.
of you.
It had, you know, it robbed me of all my money. You know, like, even though I'd be out earning money, I could have done a lot more better things with it than wasting so much on that drug. And it makes you so paranoid. And I'm thinking it's all lovely if I'm losing weight, because that's a woman thing. But
Mhm.
really, you know, you'll get all spotty, or you just, you don't realise it at the time. I look back at photos of myself, and I used to think I used to look good. It's awful, you know. So the negative effect is it destroys your family. It really affects them children. You don't think it is, because you think you're doing it behind their back, but they absolutely know. They know from the minute you're thinking about it in your head, I can't wait for them to be in bed. It's not long now before I can score my next pipe, you know. That's the life, day in and day out for years. It's no life, really. And that's all I knew. And I thought I was being a good mum because I tucked them up in bed.
Yeah, scary the things we do, the
It
stupid,
is.
the stupid shit we'll do. Like you said, leaving your kids alone, going to
Yeah.
school, forgetting that you've been out for hours.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I used to go out. Sometimes I'd be working all night and they'd have a babysitter, you know.
Okay.
But so it weren't a case them all on their own all the time. It was I'd rush off if I wanted to go and score quickly and there was no one about, you know, and then it could turn into an hour or so. It wouldn't be the whole night I wouldn't leave them, but still, you know, it still takes me out of my comfort zone, because that's not the sort of thing I want to be doing as a mother. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there was many times I weren't there because I was out working and that.
So when did it get bad enough that you decided you need to recover?
So that's my husband, Tony. So I met him through, he used to live opposite me with his partner at the time and his children. And he used to come to me and his partner to score the drugs, and me and him got liking each other, and really it kind of started really escalating then, because he's from Liverpool, and he's quite wild, and like he used to drink a lot, and it was just party mode all the time, or it was kind of chaotic a lot. He was always on the go. Well, he was doing a lot of whiz, but always on the go, and I'd be always trying to keep up with him on his sort of level, and it really got out of hand then, because as I say, I always wanted to try and keep up with him, and that's how it really started getting out of hand. And it'll be where he'd go to prison. His whole life he was always in and out of prison. He was so institutionalized, but sadly, even his upbringing, that's all he knew. It was foster care, and it was his mum and dad fighting and police, and yeah, it's a sad upbringing for him, and that's all he knew. So he was so institutionalized from a young age. And my life with him, I mean, just after we met, and then he's gone across the road to tell his partner at the time he's leaving her to come across the road to me, and she was a very feisty woman, and she got quite angry in the street where we lived. And then Tony got arrested and he went to prison. And I was left to pick up all the pieces myself. And where we lived, it was just shouting, the madness, her being angry with me, and me, if I'd have a drink, then I'd be saying something back. If I hadn't had a drink, I wouldn't say a word, And that's how it really started taking hold of me. I missed Tony so much that I was pining for him, that I'd then start drinking, and I'd be drinking more and more. But as I say, where I used to do the escorting and I got introduced to a crack cocaine pipe, that then took over with it. So I had a vicious cycle all the time of a drink, then a pipe. I would never do a pipe without a drink. Never. You tell me. There must be something there that knows clearly it is wrong. The alcohol is what takes me on that road of destruction. Now, as I'm older, as I've, and I'm in recovery, as I've learned about myself, it's always to do is, if I don't pick up that drink, I would never pick up a drug, never. That's just how I am.
So you pretty much purposely drink because you know it's going to loosen you up enough to go do drugs.
Clearly, yeah.
Okay.
And because you can get away with the alcohol. You can go to a shop and buy a drink. You can sit at home and have a drink. Hence why I wanted my children settled, because there'll be a time where then I'm going out. And, it could take you to, I mean, I had 3 times I got done for drink driving. Nothing would stop me if I wanted to go and score. Nothing, whether I'm on a push bike, pedaling myself like crazy, thinking about the children there, or whether I'm in a car. Sadly, as I say, I'm an honest person, very clearly, I can't deny how I've been.
So when did you actually get into, how did you get sober, I guess should be the question.
Yeah. So Tony died 5 years ago. I didn't finish telling you about all my children, did I? So I've got Lee, Carmen, Ryan. That was them 3. That was it. And then me and Tony had a daughter together. Her name's Tiella, which is short for Tony Ella, after her dad.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, I knew we was going to have this beautiful girl with blonde hair and curls, and she is, and yeah, it's so sweet. Tony wanted us to have more, actually, well, one more, and I always said no, and it's because of the way our life was. For a long time, I kept saying no about having a baby because, come on, look how I was. How could we bring another one into this life, you know, into our chaotic kind of way? And but we did, you know, we had Tiella, and she, yeah, Tony died 5 years ago, through addictions. He had many addictions, but the big one being prescription medication addiction. He was addicted to his painkillers, pregabalin. Um, and before he died, we weren't together. We used to split up and get back together all the time. You know, my life was constantly visiting in prison. I've been at prison, myself a few times, and and he, well, I'm forgetting what I was saying there. Sometimes I have to just take a minute because it can be a bit, you know.
Oh no, take your time. We were talking about Tony and how he was addicted to his painkillers.
Mm, mm. Um, so we had social services involvement for many years because of the drinking or the drugs, or the prison, and we always managed to just get through it, you know, not lose the children or and and then I don't know, it must have started getting really out of hand because there was a time where I couldn't be in the home. You know, he had to be here with Tiella. Excuse me. And I always thought, I can't believe me, because I always felt I was the one trying to keep it together, the more sensible one. I'd be so paranoid doing anything wrong. And whereas he's just more free flow of doing whatever and have no worry about it, sort of thing. So it didn't sit with me well at all when I had to be removed from the home and he was here. As it, you know, as it happened, he was still here drinking and whatever, what have you. And Yeah, so anyway, I came back home and we had social in our life. And it got to a point where, you know, I've got a solicitor helping me to keep Tiella. They're saying, look, she's young enough to be adopted out. If you two really can't sort this out, you're going to lose her. And I remember standing in front of a judge in the court here, and he said, choose your husband or your daughter, so clearly. And that was it for me. I knew it had to stop. I knew me and Tony, that was it. And you know, I also knew Tony was going to be dead. And is it 5 or 6 years later, that's what happened. So me and Tony split, and I got quite resentful about him, because I'm almost losing Tiella. And because when we was together, he'd go off a lot, and I'd go crazy in the head, obsessive. He's with someone else, and at times he was. I've not been an angel myself, though, remember, so it's not just him. And I was so in love with him that I used to just feel so broken that he'd want to go out, go off in the streets with friends rather than be at home and be a happy family, because that's all Tony knew. The people on the streets drinking, they were his closest friends. That's the life he would rather be around than in a settled family home, sadly. And so it was a constant battle at trying to keep Tony here, him not getting in trouble with the police, him not going to prison, me battling my own drink or drugs, and trying to be a mother to children, you know, trying to keep everything together. So in the end, we're not together, and I managed to get sober through going to AA. And I remember going in it, and there was a friend that I've kind of grown up with, knowing, you know, so she knows a lot about my life and I do her. And in fact, I had been unfaithful with her boyfriend at one time. And she's always said to me, she thought more of me because I honestly said it to her, you know, rather than trying to sort of hide it. But she was in the AA meeting, and me and her are like the closest of friends now. So, so close. Yeah, so I went to AA. And I got so it took me quite a long time. I couldn't get it straight away. And I mean, I really couldn't get it straight away. It took me a long time relapsing, going to meetings, relapsing, bearing in mind my relapsing's having a drink, because then it's not just a glass, it's not just a few glasses, it's bottle, and then it goes on to 2 bottles or 3. I'm not remembering anything. And of course, if I have a drink, I'm going out, I want a crack cocaine pipe. I don't want cocaine because that's not good enough for me anymore. It's all about crack cocaine. It just rips your soul apart, absolutely rips you apart. There's any decent feeling of being a human being. And I just kept thinking, what is the matter with me? Why can't I stop this? You know, I'd like, right, I'm not, in the end, I couldn't drink the next day because I was so rough. And then it would be the next day, or if I'm lucky, it'll be the 3rd day before I'd pick up the drink again. But all the time, I'm clock watching, I'm itching myself, thinking, what's the time? How long have I got? Thinking I want to drink. And I just kept thinking, I never knew until I'm in recovery, I'm powerless over that alcohol. I was absolutely powerless over it. I didn't have a choice to be able to say, oh, it's okay, I'll have a drink another day. The minute I started that drink, I couldn't stop. And, but thankfully, like I say, being in AA, I got sober after time, and I was 8 months sober, and then Tony died, which is a call that I knew was going to happen one day, because if he weren't with me, he would deteriorate and he'd do all drink and drugs a lot worse. And sadly for Tony, it was heroin, really badly in the end. You know, he'd turn to me a lot and want my help, and I'd want to be there for him, but I had to put our daughter first. She had to come first. And in actual fact, he literally phoned me a couple of days before asking, because he'd always asked to come home, and I had to say no, because he'd, you know, it'd be to do with heroin. I can't have that around us. I never done heroin, thankfully, but you know, no matter what, a drug's a drug. It doesn't really matter what it is. It's the you know, it changes who you are. You know, it's the addict, isn't it? You know, it's the addict in me or whoever. So sadly, after Tony died, I was all right. I weren't picking up a drink or anything. And at his funeral, I had lemonade and orange juice in a wine glass, because that's what I used to do to try and be still part of it. And it was only after, I don't know how long after, but gradually I started then wanting a drink. And then the whole cycle thing happened again. So I was stuck in addiction with it all, drink and crack cocaine again. And that probably lasted for about 3 years. And I honestly thought I was going to be dead like him. And I know my children worried that too. And I just got to a point where I didn't want to do that to any of my children. But Tiella had lost her dad at 9 years old. You know, how can she lose her mother too? How can I do that? You know, that's all I would ever think. And then lockdown happened, and thank you God for that, because it has been my life saving. Zoom, something I'd never heard about before, Zoom. So then I remember when the Prime Minister said about lockdown, the first thing in my head was get to that shop and get a drink. Yeah, as I say, it'll be a drink and then it'll be the drug. And then Zoom meetings, and I still wouldn't get it straight away. But then I gradually started really understanding it more than I did in the actual meetings face to face here. I was starting to really understand it, because we had all day. Let's remember, we could be on that Zoom meeting all day. Then we had nothing, nowhere to go. We couldn't do nothing. And then there was this a couple of blokes on a really good Zoom meeting, AA meeting, took us through it all really carefully and detailed, and like a teacher really, really taught us, and I took a lot of it in, and I started to understand it more. And I'm a Christian. That's another big part of my life, been a massive part of me becoming a better person. But it didn't happen for a long time. I was still battling drink and drugs, even being a Christian. And that was so hard for me to accept. And a lot of family would have thought, well, how could she be a Christian when she's still up to no good? But you know what? I can proudly say God loves us no matter what. And I have been accepted for who I am and thankfully become a better person through it, as part of AA, you know, too. And I started to understand it really well about AA and the steps. And I've got a sponsor, you know, and I went through the steps with her. And yeah, I can, you know, I'm just over two years clean and sober, and my life has actually started. My life has actually begun because sadly losing Tony, my husband, you know, he was such a lovely, caring person. Yes, he was crazy and chaotic and manic and all that, but he was such a caring person. He'd do anything for anyone. But sadly, losing him is now going to be the making of me, and that's so hard to say, but it's so true because I'm now basically fighting to get a red flag in the on your electronic health record when you go into a doctor. I had been with Tony and said to the doctor he is addicted to his painkillers, pregabalin. You know, he literally is going to end up dead. That was on record. And Tony was overprescribed because the doctor hadn't read down enough in his notes. And, you know, I used to go out in the mornings and it would just, you know, during lockdown when you could go and get a bit of fresh air, and it would just be playing on my mind a lot. And it's almost like I feel God's asking me to do this, to try and make something different so it don't happen to another little girl at 9 years old, or a wife isn't going to lose their husband, or grandchildren, their granddad, you know. And I believe that through losing Tony, how we did, that I can try and help others. And that's what I want to do. And
So you
that,
started a charity, it sounds like.
well, I'm in the process of trying to build this charity up. I'm only right at the beginning. I'm literally right at the beginning, talking to people to try and find out exactly how I want to do it and what really. But that's on my heart, and that's going to be my ultimate goal, to really get the word out there about prescription medication addiction, because I don't think it's spoken about enough. And that's where it started for my husband when he was a little boy with a medical condition, having to take tablets. So I believe it should be spoken a lot more in schools. Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about it before. That's a great idea to have some type of note that's in every patient's file that will
Mm,
tell the doctor addiction
yeah.
issues, be careful. I think that's a great
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah. Well, it was noted, you've got to remember. It's not just anyone. I had been in that doctor's with him, specifically letting him know about Tony's addiction to his tablets. So, you know, when it's flagged about penicillin, if you're allergic to it, well, this patient's allergic to their tablets because they're going to take too many, if you see what I mean. That doctor needs to see that straight away.
Yes.
That's my honest belief. And thankfully, I have a professor from Adam Brooks Hospital here who totally agrees with me. I've been in talks with my local MP, you know, for us to get this out there to Parliament. And, you know, I've got to really start using my voice to get this out there.
Well, I wish you the best of luck with that. It's an amazing
Thank
initiative you're
you.
taking.
Thank you, Jim.
So, how has life been for you now that you're sober? It sounds like it's going well.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful. You know, waking up every morning with a fresh head, knowing what I'd done the night before, knowing who I've spoke to, that I've not upset anyone. That's a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful feeling. It is beautiful feeling. And life's good. You know, I've got 4 children. I've got 5 grandchildren. And by the way, one of them's got Down syndrome. He's 10. And I couldn't get sober for him. You know, that used to break my heart. How could I not get sober for my daughter who would need me more than ever, need my support? But that's where addiction takes you. You know, you can never get clean or sober for anyone but yourself. But today, it really is lovely. You know, well, my children have told me they don't worry like they used to about getting that phone call to do with me now. And I'm a present parent. I'm present today, you know. I can be reliable today. I have medical conditions myself. In fact, I was on the medication that my husband overdosed on, pregabalin, and I weaned myself off them because I could see what it was doing to me. I can see exactly how people get addicted to them, and I wasn't prepared to let me be like Tony. So I weaned myself off them, and it's the best thing I ever done. I've got painkillers, and I have to take tablets still, but it's nothing like to what I was on. So I do have medical conditions. There's days where I'm in absolute agony, and I accept that today. If I can't do something one day, I accept I can't do it. But if I can, I absolutely will push myself to try and do better. Yeah, and I wouldn't be doing that if I'd pick up a drink. So that's how good it is today.
That's great. That's amazing. Good for you.
Yeah.
So again, towards the end here, did you have
Mm.
anything else that you want to add in?
Really, if anyone would ever want to speak to me to do with anything I've spoken about, I'll be more than happy. And if anyone has ever got anything they could help me with in all that I'm trying to do, I would be most grateful. But other than that, like I say, life today, clean and sober, it really, really is beautiful. And that's with a broken heart, missing my husband every single day. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
You're very welcome, Jim.
How do you feel?
I feel great.
That's great. It's good
Yeah.
to get it off your chest every now and then, right? Tell your story,
It
try and
is.
help others.
It really is. Yeah.
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 All right. Well, sit tight for me. And for everybody watching and listening, if you like what you saw and heard, go below and give us a like. Also, subscribe to see when we upload new videos. You can check us out on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Instagram, Tumblr, and TikTok. Also, check out our website, which is www.addicts-anonymous.com. There you'll find plenty of resources as well as free literature. So again, I hope you enjoyed today, and until next time.